Hi, therapy issuers. Thank you for joining in on our conversation between licensed mental health professionals. This is not meant to substitute a relationship with a licensed mental health professional. Should you become triggered or begin experiencing a mental health crisis, please go to your nearest mental health hospital, emergency room, or dial 911 or 988. And always remember, we are human first and therapist second. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and subscribe to our YouTube channel using the handle @Crave Counseling. This is Therapy-ish. All right, we are back with another episode of Therapy-ish, and I have Miss Takiesha Watson with us today. And I'm going to start by just having her introduce herself. And before we jump into that, though, I want to preface with the conversation that we're going to have today. We're going to talk a little bit about anxiety and how it shows up, more specifically in the female population. So if you can, share with us a little bit about yourself, what your, 6 months, 12-month plan is, and then a little bit about if you work in a private practice, if you have your own, or where you're actually working, and how people can reach out.
So, as you said, my name's Takiesha Watson. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the Central Texas area, but I cover the entire state of Texas and the entire state of Florida.
Okay.
I deal mostly in mental health issues with women, like depression, anxiety, trauma, and some imposter syndrome, which shows up a lot in women.
Do you have a private practice? How do people reach you? Are you accepting new clients? Do you take insurance?
I do have a private practice. It's Capturing Thoughts Counseling, because my main modality is cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay.
And in cognitive behavioral, we find those thoughts and route them out, the ones that aren't helpful. So we're capturing thoughts. The best way for people to reach me, actually, especially if they're interested in counseling with me, is to go to my website. It's www.capturing-thoughts.com. And on there, they can immediately schedule a free consultation.
Okay.
All right. And on there, they'll find all my other contact information.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. Do you take insurance, Medicaid, regular insurance, TRICARE?
I absolutely take insurance, but none of the ones that you mentioned.
Okay.
I just take Aetna, United, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, the big ones.
Yeah. I got you. All right.
Yeah.
So let's jump into this first question. Can you tell us a little bit about what anxiety looks like for some people?
Okay. I think for most people, it's worry. But people think normal worries are anxiety. But anxiety is worry on steroids. So I always use for my clients, I use this example that when I first had my baby, all new mothers, we are just worried about, I used to be like, oh my gosh, I hate him being inside my belly because everything I do affects him. And then when I had him, I was like, oh God, put him back, because now I have to worry about everything. But it manifested as anxiety with the bibs. Like when he started to drool, I was up ordering bibs and researching and the cloths and so I had found a bib that I liked that wasn't going to irritate his face. And then I ordered 100 of them, because I didn't want the drool to sit on his chest for more than 5 minutes. And it became like a preoccupation. Like people would come over and I'd be like, hold on. Oh my God, I got to change the bib. Well, I went to the store one day and I came back and my husband was not playing that switching out for every 5 minutes. So the drool was down on the bib, on his shirt, and I bust out in tears. And I was like, okay, there's something else going on. Mm-hmm. And it was really just the fear and anxiety about being a new mom. But that's what it is. It's a worry. Like, okay, it's okay to worry about getting a rash on your baby's face. But it became a preoccupation, like it was taking over my life, causing fights, and I couldn't sleep, those kind of things.
I like that you use that as an example, because some would say, oh, she has OCD. You have obsessive thoughts. And then others would say, well, I would worry about the bibs too, but it's not it wasn't the bibs. Mm-mm. It was some underlying fear or emotion that led to this, kind of like anger, right? Anger is a secondary emotion. So let's figure out what the original what the trigger emotion is. Mm-hmm. And so for you, the trigger was, I'm a new mom and I'm really doing this and I can't believe I got myself into this.
Put him back in my belly so I don't have to worry about the bib.
All right. But yes, worry and fear are usually your main indicators of anxiety. But there are also other things that because I'm CBT as well. I love it. I love it. But also, I do some somatic stuff. I am not Reiki.
Okay, right. But the stretches, the
But
self-soothing exercises, all of those.
the progressive muscle relaxation
Yes.
techniques, the guided imagery, listening to your body, identifying where it feels. And so with anxiety, a lot of people don't realize you might not be thinking it, but your body is
Feels
expressing it and is experiencing it. So even if you don't experience the worry, the fear, when you lock up and you tense up and your shoulders are up here, they're up here and you are in a place of whatever you feel, that those knots, that's your anxiety.
Or your legs shaking all the time.
Absolutely.
People squeezing their hands. Like my niece was sitting there and she started tapping her leg and I was like, hey, is something going on? And she was like, well, I actually am. How'd you know that? I'm like, you're about to start a fire on my rug, girl.
Absolutely. So that, and some would argue it's discernment, like myself, but I also know that it's anxiety. Something's causing you to be anxious, and because you don't understand it, you may be missing the fact that it's just anxiety, or that you need to be paying attention to something that your body has already picked up on. So what are things that people are most anxious about usually?
Well, I don't think there is a usually after COVID, post-COVID. So right now, the things that people are scared about weren't the things that people were scared about post-COVID. I think COVID took away this like innate need we all have for connection and created a lot of different traumas in people. And now their worries aren't like, I don't think there's a usual worry I see, because they're all different things that were created in people's families and their lives for COVID. Like, I have a lot of women who are dealing with isolation. They're learning how to make friends again because a lot of people are working from home. A lot of people have moved to places they weren't able to move to because now there's a lot of remote work. I have people who are dealing about fear of the future because they lost a lot of loved ones during COVID.
Yeah.
I think just now with the health crisis, now everyone's worried about their health because the healthcare doesn't look the way it looked pre-COVID. And, then there's inflation. Like, I think those are the worries I see most is isolation, finances, fear of the future, and about healthcare.
Yeah, you're right. I think everybody is anxious right now. It maybe not clinically diagnosed as anxious, but we all have those fears and those worries. Fear of losing things, period. Because like you mentioned, we're going through the inflation part, but we're also dealing with new terrain of people foreclosing on their homes. People, like, layoffs were always a thing, but that's new terrain for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Like, we wasn't having layoffs like this in the early 2000s. I mean, we probably were. I don't know. I haven't been laid off because I've been in education, so
Me too.
I don't know that life. And it's not funny because it does ultimately impact everyone who's experiencing it. But
yeah,
we anxious about everything.
Everything. It was. I really tell people, like, all my clients come in, they're like, I was never like this before, and I'm like, I feel like it was a trauma. You're not recognizing that whole time, like going home and then being kept in your house for all that time and separated from people, it was a trauma that you went through. And then everybody was like, let's just go back to work and let's continue on. But then we're watching every day as this death toll rises and some are wearing masks and there's not, and there's division. It was this long trauma that people went through, and they tried to go back, and it just created things in people that they didn't recognize because it like pulled the rug out from under you.
And this is an aside to what you just said. I feel like Black people have always been in that space of continuous trauma. Absolutely. So when you say that, I think in the past we were told, pull up your britches, move forward, you'll be fine. And when the whole world experienced it, it's like, oh no, we get it. Take your time, take off from work. Oh, you need a self-care day to go get your hair done. Go do that too. Like, do what you need to do. But I feel like, like you said, the whole world experienced it. So it created a new door for people to understand that you do need to slow down. You do need to actually process what's happening to you and stop pushing it under the rug. Because when COVID happened, all of this new stuff hit, but then everybody's trauma came out. People realized they didn't like their spouses.
Oh, yeah.
People realized
because they didn't have all the avoidance and the
Right.
ways to
Go to
get
work.
away from it.
Yeah, go to work.
Distraction. That's what we live in. Distraction.
And you know, so I think that doesn't align with what we're talking about, but I digress. It was just a thought.
I think it does, though, because I think anxiety shows up in different races and cultures differently. And I agree with you. Like you were saying that pick up your bootstraps. I heard my grandma say to me a lot like, girl, we ain't got time to sit around and cry about this. Just go ahead and get a towel, dry your eyes, because we have things to do. I heard that we have things to do. And I'm like, Grandma, it's okay. We can do the things and I can still cry and be sad. Like, what are you talking about?
I can still be functional. Not necessarily functionally depressed, but I can still function and do what I need to do to get where I'm trying to go. Even in me acknowledging it. Because if I acknowledge it and I deal with it now, it doesn't show up later, usually. Now, if it's something deep, it's going to show up continuously until you come up with enough coping skills to deal with it. But in hindsight, it's like a lot of people witness things that have been swept under the rug for so long. And again, you had spouses and children and like the entire world was shaken by it. And it did create new anxieties and it did create new fears, new fear unlocked, right?
That's one of my favorite phrases.
Yes, new fear unlocked. All right. So oftentimes I hear people use language like, that's my ADHD brain, that's my anxiety brain. How are the two diagnoses different? And is it different in adults versus children?
So, okay, I think ADHD, when I was thinking about this question, I think ADHD and anxiety are very different, right? So ADHD is like, you know, you see it in kids as hyperactivity, an inability of focus, to sit still, but they still have the inattentiveness, but we focus more on the activity part. And in adults, it's more of the inattentiveness. It's the brain fog. I can't, I don't know what I was working on. I started 10 tasks. I've opened the cabinets, right? But anxiety shows up as worry. And I think that the behaviors that come out, the way it's expressed, look like ADHD. The brain fog, the forgetting things, the not being able to focus on something because they're in their heads, you know, going through these distortions or fears or whatever is going on that, you know, has started as a result of their anxiety. And so then sometimes it does get mixed diagnosis like ADHD when they really just have some things they need to deal with.
Yeah. I also like to say that anxiety is debilitating, at least in my experience.
Absolutely. It's for everybody. It's debilitating, especially when you ignore it.
Depending on how intense it is, right? I feel like anxiety, you feel it. And I know I keep going back to that, but I feel like you feel it. I remember there was this time where me and like my friend, we had started working in the same role, and we were sitting in a room doing training for this new role, and this person walked in, and I immediately was like, I gotta get out of here. And my friend, and this is still like a new friend to me, so she's not really in tune with what I be processing, right? So she was like, you okay? And I was like, girl, no, I gotta get out this room. I literally have to get out of this room. And like time passed and she was like, I now understand why you had that experience when that person walked in the door. It wasn't worry, it wasn't fear, but my body was like, that's no good for you. And it manifested in like the same symptoms that you would typically experience with anxiety. But I brought that up because oftentimes we feel anxiety first, even if we don't understand why we're afraid, why we're worried. Something is stored in your body, or your body has some neural pathways, some things that have surfaced. And when it's anxiety, it's debilitating. It literally will take you down. Being stuck in a thought loop around a fear, around a worry, around a loss, around whatever it is you are stuck in, will tear you down. Literally, like when I get anxious, I'm in bed for like 2 days. I literally am overstimulated and I don't want to deal with anything or anybody. So I think that when you think about the difference between ADHD and anxiety, I think you feel it. I think you feel it more than anything. I mean, you think it, but then you get stuck and then your heart rate increases, your body tenses up and you just get stuck. Whereas like you said with ADHD, it's just, oh, I'm just distracted. I know I'm distracted. Let me get up. Let me take a break. With anxiety, it's like you're stuck. You're stuck in it.
I feel like, too, with anxiety, that people who don't know they have it, they learn to mask it for so long that potentially the reason that they get stuck like that is because they've been pushing it down. They don't deal with it. They're not dealing with it. And then it just keeps, each thing keeps laying on top of each other. And then it turns into something that's unmanageable.
But you're right. You have to be honest with yourself about what's happening to you or with you. And as you mentioned before, like in the past, people just kind of brush things under the rug. And we just literally was, oh, I'll take that too. Oh, caught that ball. Like, oh, like literally like running down a football field.
Just take a deep breath because I got things to do.
And it's like, first down, chill.
Yeah.
Chill. Sit down somewhere. Process what just happened in the last play. And start over.
Well, that's why even if people don't have trauma, the best way for me to explain it to people is, the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I love the title. Like, it's a brilliant title. Your body keeps the score on everything that happens to you. And whether you think you pushed it down and it's disappeared, it's under there and it will surface. Like when that man came in and it got triggered. At some point, your body's going to force you to deal with it because it's only got so much capacity for so much stuff. And then it's going to come out at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The five senses are powerful. Literally, your brain stores information. Even if you don't know it's stored there, the brain has stored it based on how it's been taken in by the brain. So if it's something in your body, yes, you're going to feel it there because that's how the brain took it in and stored it.
Yeah. In the book, The Whole Brain Child, have you ever read that one?
So I had the English and the Spanish version. And I called myself trying to read both. And halfway through both, I was like, hey, chill. You're doing too much.
There's an exercise in there that I love, and I use it with my clients a lot. It's called Tell, Retell. And it talks about how sometimes we store traumatic things have happened to us, and then we just store it right at the end of the trauma. And then it becomes a fear, which makes us anxious about things. So it makes people pull up that memory and keep telling the story, not to where it ended, like, oh, and then I got into a car accident, we got hit. But okay, after that, when did you finally feel safe? And then we tell the story until they felt safe. And then I make my clients tell it again until they felt safe. And I make them retell the story until they stop crying at that trauma piece and they get to the safe. And I tell them, go home. And every time you start feeling panicked about this, retell the story. And in a week, it's like they have conquered that because you can change your working memory. You can change those long-term, but you have to retell the story.
Yeah. And to your point, I feel like the other difference between ADHD and and anxiety is that usually anxiety is rooted in a perceived experience of trauma, whether you saw something, and again, that not to lean into PTSD so much, but you saw something that would take you down. Not necessarily that it was a traumatic experience per se, but like witnessing something happen that taking you down. And now, like you said, it's being stored as a new fear, a new experience that hasn't even happened. There's this quote, I like using it in therapy as well. I think I'm gonna probably say it wrong, but I'm gonna say it. I think it says, thinking about the past is depression. Thinking about the future is anxiety. And to be at peace is to be present, right? And so when you find yourself anxious, it's probably about something you are perceiving to happen in the future. So I think that's also the difference too, because ADHD is really just more so being easily distracted. Like literally any little thing, a sound, a smell, anything can distract you.
And ADHD is like chemical. It's
Right.
like a difference in the brain. The anxiety is caused from, CBT, it's our
Memory.
experiences, it's our thoughts about it. And so it's tied to a core belief. So going back to that example that I used with my son's bibs, my core belief was I'm not going to be a good mother. So then an event happens. He gets a rash one time when I don't wipe the slobber off. And then I'm like, oh my God, I got to fix this because if I don't, I'm not going to be a good mother. The core of it was.
Yeah.
But I could control this one thing. And then it just turned into all the time, all I could think about was bibs.
And I like that you said control, because that's also there too.
That's what people want. And they do it in maladaptive ways.
I love telling people control only feels good when it works. Control only feels good when it works.
Right.
Let it go. Let it go.
Yeah.
Okay. So then how does anxiety look different in Black women in comparison to others? Because they did that research on like depression looking different in Black women.
I mean, you hinted on it earlier when you were talking about it being swept under the rug, right? But there's this whole past of intergenerational trauma that has been passed on from generation in the Black community, right? And as women, the matriarchs, the protectors of the family, what they feel is this perceived fear and stress about taking care of the family. Add on to that, then now we have this distrust of systems, law enforcement, healthcare systems, and then add COVID and racial trauma, these fatal police killings that people are seeing. I read a news story and it said that kids, the younger kids, because you know how the suicide rate jumped up, that they spent that time during COVID in their homes watching public lynchings. And I was like,
Absolutely.
wow, that's the best way to describe it. So now you have these mothers also watching these public lynchings, trying to keep their kids safe. You see mothers who have young Black men talking about it, but also the daughters, like, how do I teach my kids everything they need to know to keep them safe? Because I watched all these different videos of kids who did what I would have taught my kids and they still got shot. And then add on to that, Black women who are in the corporate world who are code switching. And like, am I code switching enough to be competent in this area? I want to move up to here. Can I do that? And then they're code switching and they have to code switch back to be accepted in their community. And some don't do that well. And then add on to that, just being a woman, just aging and worrying about, worried about
Talk about new fears unlocked when you hit 30.
relationships, taking care of your kids. And so then at the end of all of those extra worries is a cultural expectation that we don't really do mental health. You need to get yourself together. So then there's a cultural expectation to mask those things and continue on. And so anxiety, they've shown in Black women that more often you see the somatic symptoms. You see the stomach aches, the headaches, the shoulders. Like they're not saying, oh, I feel anxious. They're saying something's going on with my body. And they're going to the doctor and then being told that it's mental. And then they don't want to seek help because in our community, we think, like my grandma said to me the other day, I'm not crazy. I'm like, why are you bragging to people about me being a counselor? And then,
they love saying, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. And this is my theory. I don't know that there's research on it, but I'm going to say it out loud. Somebody argue with me. but I also think that anxiety in Black women looks like escapism.
How so?
What are Black women always trying to do?
I just get away.
Get away.
Distraction, avoidance.
I'm going to go to happy hour.
Yeah.
I'm leaving these kids at home.
Yeah.
Or I want to go on this trip. I want to shut out all the noise.
Oh, and too, if you think about all the memes that pop up, like me planning my next trip with $5 in my bank account, that's why those decisions are made in that way, because you feel like you have to have it because
drowning.
You're using it to cope.
I'm drowning. It also feels
that's a good
like
point.
drowning too.
Yeah.
Because we, like you said, the somatic symptoms, sometimes we get so physically overstimulated. And I don't know why I keep going back to the physical part of it. I think because that's how I experience it. So I'm just talking from a lens of my experience. Being overstimulated to a point to where you can't take anything else in, it forces you to escape. You have to. Because if you don't, there is no way for you to get a handle of it. I'm overwhelmed with work. I'm overwhelmed with being a parent. And if I'm not a parent, I'm overwhelmed with what's wrong with you because you don't have kids. You're not married. What's wrong with you because you're not married?
Right.
Oh, you're divorced. Okay. Well, what happened?
What'd you do?
The list goes on and on. And again, that's not to use that as a reason for why most people experience anxiety, but a lot of us experience anxiety because of the labels. For us, in order for us to deal with the labels or the anxiety around the labels, we have to escape. And where do you escape? The labels. You leave the community or the society that you're in.
Yeah.
To find peace.
Well, I've been adding in some DBT because one of my favorite ones, another title that I just, it's one of my jams, is the distress tolerance. That we were never taught to just tolerate the pain and the distress. Like sometimes you have to just sit in that and you have to take deep breaths and say it for what it is. Like, I'm sad because my husband died. There is nothing you can do to change that feeling.
Yeah.
And then you learn to tolerate it by breathing, calming your body, self-soothing, giving a hug. Running and going to work does not teach you to tolerate that. It teaches you to avoid it. And I would say in all cultures, there is a lack of distress tolerance being taught. And at all ages. It's like desperately needed.
But I'd like to say that there is a time where we did learn it. Because we now have social media, we've de-learned it, or
You were taught distress tolerance? How old are you?
I'm 33.
Oh, so okay. In my generation, they were not trying to.
But hear me out, because you're gonna say no, that's not distress tolerance. Hear me out. So in my mind, you remember being a kid and because I didn't get whoopings. We didn't get whoopings. Well, I didn't get whoopings. I'm gonna just put it out there. I didn't get whoopings. Now other people in the house might got whoopings, but I didn't get whoopings.
You were the good one.
No, I'm not gonna say I was the good one. I was innocent. You're right. I was a kid. My mom just had to give me a look, and that's all I needed. That's literally all I needed. But being told to go sit in your room until you figure it out, that's what I'm talking about. We've all had that. Remember being a kid and, your parents were like, I'm finna whoop you, and now you finna go in that room and you gonna figure out what you did wrong? Well, we didn't go in the room to figure out what we did wrong. Our feelings were valid, and our choice was our choice, right? But we went through every single emotion in that room. I'm gonna run away. I'm gonna do this. She gonna be mad when like, you literally go through everything. And then by the time you get to the end of it, you be like, she right.
Well, but the piece that's missing in that, you're right. The thought process is there, but there was no follow-up with someone telling you, hey, while you're going through the thought process, you have got to do these things to calm your body and feel safe. Because I will say from time to time, I was sent to my room. It wasn't a safe place. It wasn't a good place. No one was saying, hey, take a deep breath. You can think about, it's not always going to be this way. There's grateful. Let me give you a hug while you're mad.
That's fair.
That is the piece that distress tolerance teaches, is that, yes, you're going to go through the thought process and you have to live in it. But there's also ways you can live in it that don't feel as hard as what you're doing sitting in the room by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. My room was safe. So I guess that's why I'm like, maybe for me, that's what
You were self-soothing in your room while you were mad?
Listen, I'll be in there coloring. I'll be in there. I was a reader. So I would like go through my emotions and then I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna read a book. But I guess that goes back to escapism.
I was just going to say, you were not tolerating. You're avoiding it in the fantasy world, and you're
escapism. You're right. You might be onto something there. You might be onto something. But I also, when I left the room, there was no trauma reenacted.
But that's because you had thought about all of the thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And what you had come to a conclusion of, there's no control unless I do this thing. And I'm going to agree and go out there because ultimately my parents are the authority, right? They've said these things are true. And unless I see like, okay, since my parents have made these rules, they sent me here to think about it, I did break their rules. But it was just like a conclusion, not okay, my parents made these rules. This is why I'm upset about this rule. And I can be upset about the rule. It's okay for me to have that feeling. And so, but instead of showing anger the wrong way, I'm going to do something in here that gives me peace. I'm going to laugh about a joke that my friend told me. I'm going to read a book because it makes me happy. And then I'm just going to recognize that I'm distressed. You were like, I don't know. They're going to make me sit in this room and I'm going to tell them what they want to say. And then I'm going to read my book and find out.
See, no, I didn't do that. No, I didn't do that. Because we had a very safe house, in my opinion.
Mine too.
So I didn't do that. I just was like, okay, I'm done with that emotion. I'm done with that experience. It is what it is. And not that the rules are the rules, because we used to have like conversations on the front porch as a family unit. What do you want to do? What school do you want to go to? Oh, your needs are not being met. All right, we gonna switch your school. We had family conversations. So I think for me, when I processed it, I didn't process it as in like the rules are the rules. I processed it as in like, okay, Asha, you really was doing too much. Because again, I didn't get whoopings, and my mom never really had to say much to me. So if I had to go to I clearly was either
It was a lot.
I was playing too much, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Like literally, I did something wrong. It was legit.
And you know, it's interesting because you talk about the talks your family had because they were teaching you emotional intelligence,
Right.
which when you went to your room, then you could probably work through it.
So again, I feel like
a
I'm
maturity level that was higher, but
I feel like I'm the anomaly.
I was gonna say
I'm the anomaly.
That's not
I
everybody's
use
experience.
that often. I use that. I always tell people I am an anomaly, and
I'm
I
a right
understand.
fighter. So if you send me to my room, I'm still mad about it.
And I know I was privileged. I tell people a lot. I grew up privileged. In so many ways. So I think that that's why I see the world different. And when I say privilege, not necessarily financially, but I had two parents who loved me.
Yeah.
There was no abuse in the home.
Right.
They showed up to games. They did the things. So I think the way I processed things in my youth looked very different than what maybe my counterparts did because their experiences weren't the same as mine.
You know what makes me sad that way back in the day when we talked about privilege, it was socioeconomic status. And
Right.
now when we talk about
Or
privilege or race, right. Now when we talk about privilege, it's a lack of the things that you have the things that are needed for connection. That should not be a privilege.
Human rights.
It's just unfortunate, but it's true. You know,
Yeah.
if you look, there are a lot of single parent families, you know.
Yeah. All right. So we down to the last two questions. So let's get into the next question. What are some things people who struggle with anxiety can do to manage the intensity of the symptoms? So what are some coping skills that people can implement if they're struggling with anxiety?
Well, because I focus on CBT, I teach a lot of people grounding to start off with because a lot of their worries are in their thoughts. And grounding just gives you the opportunity to just take your brain back and get out of that. Whether you're thinking about the past or you're thinking about the future, it sets you on a new path. And then you can do the deep breathing, some relaxation exercises, mindfulness exercises to get yourself back where you need to be. And also, a lot of people don't know this, but scientifically, you literally cannot use your brain. If you're too angry, if you're too sad, if you're anxious or stressed out, they put those, the probes in the brain to show that your frontal lobe completely shuts off. So then all you have is, I always say this wrong, is it amygdala?
Yeah, I was just going to say the amygdala is where all of that stuff starts.
I used to say amygdala, and my clients would be like,
so funny.
"Oh, okay, baby."
You're so funny.
Amygdala.
But we're human.
Right,
okay?
right. I think I just like the way it's said better. So that's all you can access. And that's all the irrationality, the emotionality, the things that don't get you to the point. So when they can ground and breathe, then they can get back to a point where they can look for truth. And the truth is not what's causing the anxious feelings. It's all of the fallacies that their brain is telling them.
Or what they were conditioned to believe.
Yes, that part.
Yeah. So, okay. What is grounding? What does that mean?
So grounding is a way to just I say, bring you back down to the ground, bring you back to earth. And I think the most common ones is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's taking some time to look around and it's like, what are 5 things that you can see? What are 4 things that you can touch, like put your hands on or that can touch your body? What are 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell? And then because I do telehealth therapy, I always say to my clients, if I gave you your favorite candy to put in your mouth, what flavors would you taste?
Yeah.
And people it's so simple, but when you start looking around the room like, oh, okay, I see a light, I see some gold mirrors, I see an orange pillow, then you automatically stop thinking about it. And that's when I ask them after we do it, the whole time you were looking for things, did you think about the thing that was worrying you? And they always say no. And there's tons of other grounding, easy ones that you don't have to memorize. Like name every song you listened to this past week. What are all the TV shows you watched, But automatically when you start thinking about those things, your brain has to disengage from the worry.
Absolutely. And to add to your grounding, I like to describe it, I guess paint a picture of when people who do experience anxiety, you ever notice they lay across the floor?
For panic attacks, is that what you're
There's
talking about?
a lot of, literally people just lay across the floor. And I think that there's something about like the magnetic energy between the earth and the body, which is where we got the term grounding to begin
Because
with.
people go out and ground. Me and my son do that every
Literally,
morning. We
in
go
the
stand in the
grass.
sun, get some sun, and then I stand in the grass and he wants to stand in the dirt.
Yeah.
And they have grounding sheets now where you stick the pole and the outside ground and you put the sheets on your bed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it's energy.
I think that has
healing.
a huge, and I guess that's why you experience anxiety in your body. I don't know. I don't know. But again, even kids, you notice that when kids are like moving, they literally will go lay across the floor, and you be like, "Get off the floor!"
When they're dysregulated, throwing a fit, they do always, and then they're stomping their feet
flat on the floor. And you be like, "Why are you doing that?" Baby, this earth is gonna calm them. Let them lay there. Now, maybe not in Target, because that's not Target behavior. That's Walmart behavior. But, you know.
Well, we're going to allow people, and we're going to say, hey, you just let your baby tolerate that distress. You're teaching them a skill for the future.
Okay. And then the next, last question is, what are some alternatives to traditional therapy that can help people who struggle with anxiety?
Oh, so wait, I want to add to my thing for ways to deal with anxiety that you should definitely try and find a therapist that you click with.
That too.
That would be my first before the grounding and everything, because those are temporary measures you still got to deal with the stuff. But there are so many different alternative forms. There's art and music therapy. There's the somatic, which you're doing. There is the animal assisted therapy, which I love, the whole thing with the horses, and now they've added in cows. There's also all those studies now with ketamine and the mushroom therapy, which the psilocybin that a lot of people have been utilizing. It's really helped them because, that any kind of medication you take, if you take it long term, it has side effects.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people have been going on these weekend long trips
Retreats
to deal with their anxiety. And in a weekend on microdoses of the psilocybin, they are able to come back and function without their medication. And I think there's really some value in exploring that, especially the cost of medication nowadays.
Absolutely.
And ketamine has shown some also really good results.
Ayahuasca, some would say marijuana.
Yeah.
But again, none of these things are legal without a healthcare professional.
Marijuana
in Texas
for anxiety is tricky. Because, marijuana, a lot of people self-medicate. I'm glad we're talking about
and
this
microdosing
with marijuana. But you have to get the dosing exactly correct, because marijuana is tricky in that it will give you a feeling of relaxation initially. But if you utilize too much of it, it makes you more anxious. And a lot of people don't know that. And so...
Yeah, like edibles versus...
that part.
Because I've seen some people who... What's going on with Fridays? It's a prime example of what you're talking about. Now, I don't know if his stuff was laced or not, but
it had to be laced because he was in a cage clucking like a chicken.
But we're not condoning the use of these things. So I want to make sure y'all understand what we're saying. We're just saying that
they're out there.
In the work that we do, ketamine is the one that has come to surface as one that is a treatment here in Texas, but you have to do it with the healthcare provider and a clinician present. If you're in other states like California, Illinois, I think marijuana is legal or for medicinal purposes. And there they may use it. Again, I'm not licensed in either of those states. Well, I'm licensed in Missouri, but in some of those states, that's what they use as a method of treatment. But then you have ayahuasca, which I don't even think you can use that in the States, but that's neither here nor there. There are people who go and they do
for
those
a weekend
things.
Retreat, and then they find
Shrooms,
release.
mushrooms, all of these things have been tested on military personnel. Usually, majority of the research that we do have about it, it's because they tested it on the military. Military members and how they deal with anxiety, PTSD, depression, all the things. So I said all that to say is we're not condoning these things. We're just saying that this is what...
No.
I'm trying to make sure I keep my license. We're just saying this is how we see people describe what they've tried when they come in for therapy. We say, what do you try? Well, I tried this. I tried marijuana. I tried this. Okay. Is it working? And also, is it, contradicting, am I saying that right? Contradicting the medication that you're taking.
I think I hear about marijuana the most, and that
Absolutely.
I think to me, it's for anxiety is the most alarming because they're really working against themselves because no one's, that's why you need a clinician or someone to manage those doses. Even in the study they're doing on cancer patients with the marijuana,
Absolutely.
they have someone saying, hey, the tumor shrunk at this amount, or that you do need someone to say, this is probably how much you should be doing.
Absolutely. Through labs, blood tests, all the things. So yeah, well, I definitely appreciate you for talking through this conversation around anxiety, because again, 99.9999999% of people experience it daily. Whether it's did I submit that? Did I do this? Did I do that? That's a worry. That's you constantly experience. Now, it might not be on times 10, right? But it's a worry, and you need to know how to deal with it. Why do you feel like you keep forgetting things? Why do you feel like you're going to get fired every day? Why do you feel like you're going to be alone for the rest of your life? Like, why do you feel that way? And really deal with it. The other thing I forgot to mention is this is traditional, but it's non-traditional how people use it. Xanax.
Yes. But I don't know that anybody likes the Xanax because it's addictive, and that's
what I'm talking about.
It's a quick fix. It's another way to escape and not have to deal with it. It really just is a way to avoid it because you don't feel anything.
Yeah. And that's what made me think about it, because I'm like, no, I've had people say, oh, I ran out of my Xanax. And I'm like, you're supposed to take this,
because
this, and this.
As soon as they feel it, they take that. And then they're like, oh, God, I feel so much better. I didn't deal with anything. I don't know what core belief is causing this worry, whether it's excessive or not. I haven't dealt with any of the things that I need to deal with.
And I would say also even, and I promise I'm going to end with this, even starting your day, setting intentions will help with your anxiety. Because if you wake up and you're ridden with fear, you're gonna operate throughout your day in fear. But if you wake up, and even if you have the thought of fear, set those affirmations and those intentions, ground yourself, meditate, whatever you need to do to make sure that you set that thought in to overpower the maladaptive thoughts that you have. Start there, and then throughout the day, those intentions are already set, and you just remind yourself of those intentions that you made that morning, and you stay committed to whatever it was that you set out for yourself for that day.
Well, and research says a space of gratitude is the best one to start your day in and end your day in. And I think that's true. No matter what you're going through, you can find things to be grateful for and appreciate.
All right. So if you can, tell us again your name, where you're located at, how people can reach you, and then we'll end on that note.
So my name is Takiesha Watson. I'm in Central Texas. I do telehealth for all of Texas and all of Florida. And if you'd like to book a consultation with me, you can go to www.capturing-thoughts.com and schedule a free consultation there.
All righty. Thank y'all. We'll see you guys in the next episode.